Both Baltimore and Dallas suffered shocking Week 2 losses as the Ravens let the Raiders come back and beat them at home, while the Dallas Cowboys got absolutely stomped by the New Orleans Saints here in Week 2. Both teams are looking to get back on the right track, and Ravens especially are trying to avoid going 0-3 as they both meet up in Dallas for this Week 3 matchup. Ryan and I, we're going to break down the game, the matchups that are going to be that you should watch within the game, and give our predictions at the very end of the video. But before we get into that, we want to give everybody a huge thank you to subscribe to the Tracy Take within the past week. We surpassed our 100 new subscriber goal with our Week 2 videos, not only just by 100, but we got over 200 new subscribers to the channel. So welcome to everybody. And if this is your first time here and you have not already, go ahead and hit that subscriber button. But let's just see if we can get another new 100 subscribers from these Week 3 videos here. So hit that subscribe button, like the video, and leave a comment. Let us know who you think is going to win here. And so, Ryan, I would say both of the Ravens and Cowboys losses were shocking in like the exact opposite way. Ravens blew the game against the Raiders. They allowed the Raiders to score on their final 4 possessions of the game, and really just kind of offensively just kind of fell apart. Defensively, you kind of go and look at the weapons that the Raiders have, and it can kind of make sense that the Raiders can go and can go and score a lot of points when you go look at their weapons. But I think that to me, it was offensively, it just seemed they just stalled out in the second half and just really struggled to move the ball, just inconsistently, similar to what we saw in Week 1. And on the flip side, the Cowboys, I mean, it wasn't even a game at all. I'm not surprised that the Saints beat the Cowboys. I'm surprised with how they beat the Cowboys, because the Cowboys seemed like on defense, they had absolutely no answers to that Saints offense, which was a little surprising just considering of some of the weapons that are on this defense. You can chalk it up to it's just early part of the season and whatnot, but definitely very concerning to see them give up a lot of rushing yards, give up deep balls, give them consistent medium yard throws. And so what are your kind of overall thoughts on both of these two teams heading into this Week 3 matchup so far this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of a shock, especially with how Baltimore played in the opener, where it was sloppy, but like you could see the overall talent just on the field for them, that it was a really nice pack, like offensive unit that they had together.
You see the pieces that are there.
Yeah. And you expect them to be able to grow and get better as the season goes on. But that kind of wasn't the case here. They had some big plays in the first half, like you said, but stalled out. And some of that, I think, is just inconsistencies. I saw some errant throws from Lamar. I know he was one of the most efficient passers in the league last year. He's not off to a start to repeat that this year. And so I think that's going to be interesting to kind of monitor how the reigning MVP does. But I think, to me, the consistency starts with him. And then also getting Derrick Henry the ball more. One of the things that was frustrating in the Chiefs game was like they gave him 6 carries on the first drive, and then he only got 8 other carries throughout the rest of the game. And it's like, for a running back like Derrick Henry, giving him only 14 carries does him such a disservice, because he does his best works after like 18 carries, and he's like, all right, now you're feeding him and he's getting 6, 8, 10 yards a pop, and then that's when he busts the long one. Because defenses just get so tired of tackling a 6'2", 260-pound guy running 20-plus miles an hour. Like, that just wears you down. And that, to me, I want to see the Ravens adopt that in this game.
And that's good you said 18, because that's exactly the amount of carries that he did have. And so he had 18 carries for 84 yards. He did get a touchdown. He had the touchdown that they had in the second half. But I can see what you're saying, though, because it's you feel like it's something more, and maybe they're still just trying to work out the balance. Maybe we're being too critical.
It could be also offensive line related.
Well, and because it is a younger offensive line that's still kind of getting used to working together, and I feel confident that throughout the season that they're going to figure it out. But I do think that the whole offense kind of starts through the run there, so establishing that run early. I think another factor as well that we're maybe not talking about, and we've talked about Lamar's just needs to be more consistent throwing the ball, because we obviously know what he can do with his dual threat capabilities. But I do think here it's they don't really have, in my opinion, another true receiver threat. We all know how popular Zay Flowers is. I'm talking about wide receiver. Obviously, I know Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely are great, but if they had another speedster guy across from Zay Flowers here, something similar, I think, to like what Kansas City's doing with like Rashee Rice and then like David Worthy, for
Yeah.
example, like or what their intentions are going to be. I think that could be more game changing for this offense because everybody's going to know that they're going to want to run the ball more, and uh, so and with just the one true receiver threat in Zay Flowers, it does allow them to put an extra guy in the box maybe because at the same time you do also sell Mark Andrews, who's most of the time going to be lined up in the slot or in a down tight end. So I think that limits some of their capabilities to be as explosive as possible. If that makes sense. And I think if they traded for another key receiver here, or maybe draft one kind of in this next upcoming draft, I'm curious kind of how this offense can keep on going because it does seem like they just stall out passing the ball sometimes when they're trying to be as balanced as possible. So, but that being said, that's probably very ticky tacky. It's very early on in
Yeah.
the season. These types of games happen where you just blow the lead, and it's rather have it do now early on in the season than than later on in the season when
Yeah.
those games really matter the most. So um,
Yeah.
let's get into kind of this matchup here between Baltimore and Dallas.
Well, I want to talk. We talked a lot about the Ravens. I want to talk about the Cowboys too.
Oh yeah, well yeah,
So one of the things I noticed with the Cowboys was when this defense, like the Browns, let this defense play downhill and they let them play fast, and they were dominant playing downhill. One thing I noticed that the Saints did was they did not let this defense come downhill. They pulled them kind of sideline to sideline and got them on their heels a little bit, and that's like the wheels totally fell off. And so I think that's going to be interesting with this defense. And then also today, like last week with the Cowboys offense, it looked like it was all right. We got 3 or 4 guys on the offensive side of the ball that can really make plays. Today, it looked like it was just CD Lamb that could really make plays. So, and I know other guys had moments, but on a consistent level, CD Lamb I think is still going to be a very big focal point in that offense's production, and like for good reason. I just don't know if like the supporting cast how those guys will fare throughout the duration of the season. And that for me, I think is going to be really interesting to kind of see going forward.
yeah, it definitely was. The Saints defense is solid to give a little bit of slack, but to me, I think it's just going to be the concerning part on the defensive side of the ball is they couldn't stop the run, they couldn't stop the short passes, couldn't stop the medium
Yeah.
passes, couldn't stop the deep balls as well, and so that's where from my experience, if you can't do any of those, it's not normally a good recipe for success, as we saw today. And then kind of translating those to what this next game is going to be against the Ravens. They can kind of do some similar stuff. They can pound the ball with Derrick Henry as well. But as we talked about with the speed that they have with Zay Flowers, and then you're still going to have some big catching machines with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely as well. There's going to be some big targets for them that they have to cover. But I think one of the benefits, though, is I feel like they don't have to worry as much about the deep ball as it did with Rashid Shaheed with the New Orleans Saints. I mean, you're still going to have guys like Rashad Bateman, uh, um, like Nelson Aguilar, and some of those guys, but that's not as typical of what their game is. I feel like the Ravens games typically are like 9-10 yard running chunks at a time, or those crossing routes with Zay
Yeah.
Flowers. And so I think that the game of the matchup that I'm going to see is really going to be like how can Micah Parsons keep Lamar Jackson kind of contained inside the pocket and not allow him to break out and get loose, because that's when that dual threat capability comes in for the Lamar Jackson and the Ravens team. If they're able to keep them contained and kind of stymie that Derrick Henry run game, which has not been their success at all. I will say normally a lot of team success running the ball has been against Micah Parsons. So they're has been running at Micah Parsons
Yeah.
in particular. So that to me, I think, is going to be one of the key matchups for this game. What do you think is going to be one of the key X factors?
Yeah, I think Trayvon Diggs and Zay Flowers, they might not be matched up a ton, but like if those guys can lock down their side of the field wherever they are, or make explosive plays on their side of the field for Zay Flowers, I think that's going to be really important because I think we saw in the Browns game they stopped the run, then they got after Deshaun Watson, and with getting after Deshaun Watson, they really just completely stifled this passing attack. And I think the Ravens they're going to have to do something very very similar to that then
Yeah.
and that's like they have to stop Lamar from breaking this game.
Yeah.
So because
Yeah.
he can definitely do that. And I guess getting into the predictions here, I'll start it off. I'll go. I'm probably going to take the Cowboys here. Or I'm sorry, the Ravens here. I just think at this point they have a probably more explosive offense. I like the matchups on their defense versus the Cowboys wide receivers because you have Marlon Humphreys, Nate Wiggins, and company against basically CD Lamb, and like then a group of ragtag kind of receivers. Brandon Cooks at this point is past his prime. Jalen Tolbert has kind of struggled with injuries, but is like really yet to catch on. Jake Ferguson is most likely going to be out for the Cowboys again another week in a row. So all in all, I just think the Ravens probably edged this one out. My biggest thing, I hope they realize going into this week that they need to give Derrick Henry more carries, especially more carries in the direction of Micah Parsons, because that's when, if you want to drive the ball down the field, that's how Lamar is going to get the 7-step drops that and be able to push the ball down the field, is if you run play action at Micah Parsons and kind of stymie his pass rush, because trying to just block him one-on-one is not going to work.
Yeah, yeah. So I am going to go with Dallas here, and actually the Ravens fall into 0-3. Some of my reasons for that is I think a lot of people are underestimating the explosiveness of the Saints team because we saw them beat them on all levels, and so it really stretched that Cowboys defense out.
To be fair,
yeah, we did. To be fair, yeah. And the Ravens offense, though, they're in a different way. They keep things a little more contained. They're not going to be able to stretch the field nearly as far as the Saints can. So I think it's going to take a little bit easier on Dallas as well. And I also think too, I don't really particularly think I think a lot of people stopped playing kind of halfway through the third quarter, end of the fourth quarter, because the game had just gotten blown out so much. But I really don't think the Dallas offense played super horribly. They just struggled to get the ball into the end zone against a pretty good Saints defense. If I pull up here the flow chart, because they had a lot. Brandon Arbery had a lot of field goals. Felt like a lot of field goals that were in the 30 or 40 yard range. And so let me just look up the scoring plays here. And so I think they were able to move the ball decently well. They just couldn't get the ball in the end zone. And then the Saints just kept having these huge explosive plays. And so I think the Cowboys are going to clean those up here. They're not going to, I think, be as susceptible to those against the Ravens as they might have been against the Saints today. But yeah, if I look at this, so he made a 52-yarder first off, then a 38-yarder, then a 48-yarder, then a 40-yarder. And so they were clear. They were moving the ball decently well down the field. They just couldn't get the ball in the end zone. The Saints did a great job stopping them once they got closer to that 20-yard range. And so it's going to be a tight matchup, big game for both teams because Ravens don't want to go 0-3, and the Cowboys don't want to go and have a losing record. So I'm going to go with I'm going to go with the Cowboys here. Disagree with you here because I'm feeling a little confident because I got a couple games up on you in our season-long matchup. So I'm thinking of maybe taking some risk here, taking some risk in this matchup.
All right. Well, I like it. I like when we disagree. But let's go ahead. We'll wrap this one up here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on who you think is going to come out ahead in this matchup. Will it be the Baltimore Ravens? Will it be the Dallas Cowboys? And on that, we will see you guys next time.